This is the Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network.
We're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel. Ah!
Welcome back to Microqueers, your weekly roundup of queer horror shorts. I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking animation again with Juliette.
This time we've gotten a little French.
I did not expect that when you sent that to me, Joe. I'm gonna play Dom, though, and say that I don't quite think I understood the ending of this film, so you might need to help me out.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so folks, if you haven't had a chance to check out the short, this is just under 7 minutes long, and it is in French, although it's made by a Portuguese director in Laura... help me out, is it?
I'm going to say Didazio. And of course, as per usual, the link to the video is in our show notes.
Yeah, so if folks haven't had a chance to check this out, the very, very brief synopsis of this is Juliette is a shy girl terrified to catch a ride with two women that are not paying any attention to the road.
Yep.
Oh,
I thought there was I think you were going to continue.
No, I know. When you look at it, you think, well, there is a little bit more to that. I mean, sure, it's 7 minutes long, but there's a smidgen more to that where, you know, there's an accident and the two women are killed and you're not sure whether it was done by Juliette or if it was done in the accident, and there's some psychosexual stuff going on. It's all very fun.
Fun. That's a word for it. Basically, like, yeah, she's like stalked by eyes. It's beautifully animated, I should point out as well. But the eyes wound up being a younger version of herself who killed these women. I don't know.
Yeah, so here, maybe I can shed a little bit of light on this. So Alter actually has a bit of an explanation as to why they picked this on the link on YouTube. And it says that they were looking to expand on their international films. So they chose this one from, they say, our more sexually liberated friends in France, because there is a sexualized component to this. There is a menage a trois lesbian makeout scene.
I mean, even the dialogue between the girls in the opening scene, it's one scene, when they're talking about big cocks and butt fucking. Like, I've seen, like, you know, mature animation before, but it always kind of takes me aback because I think my mind is still in, like, that this is for children mindset. And so, yeah, to hear them talking about big cocks, I was like, all right, okay, you do you, Juliette.
Well, it's important to note, too, that although this is a Portuguese director, I'm presuming that she's working out of France, which is why this is in French. I did find this other interview with her where she talks about trying to use adult animation to break into the horror genre. Because as we've talked about, in France, horror is not a popular genre. So She wanted to use her craft to try to gently move that conversation forward. And I thought that was interesting because, yeah, like, not only do we not often see a lot of animated adult films, but particularly not horror adult animated films either. We've got a couple more on the list, so this won't be the last one we cover.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all. I feel like shorts are a really good, like, I feel like a good chunk of shorts are animated just because, I don't know, maybe because they're shorts, it's not as arduous of a task as doing a feature-length animated film.
I can only imagine that if you're an animator, doing a short compared to doing a full feature-length is like night and day. Like, yeah. You could maybe work for a short period of time on a short and feel like you've accomplished this. Whereas if you're going to make a feature, it's like a big commitment.
So, all right, what do we make of this? I mean, do you think that it's supposed to be more open-ended as to what the younger version of herself represents, or did you get a clear reading of it from the get-go?
So I see this almost as, and you're going to tell me if you find this a weird reading, I feel like this is a version, like an animated version of High Tension.
So okay, I can see that because I assume that there was a queer component. I mean, there is a queer component to it in the kind of menage a trois scene. So do you think that this is like her queerness, like killing the objects of her lust?
Okay, so to come back to this altered description, it says the film explores the struggles a teen girl is going through with puberty and her sexual awakening, which goes against her strict religious upbringing, as evidenced in the Virgin Mary crying blood. To protect herself from these feelings she doesn't understand, the girl lashes out to murderous end. So in this way, you can see this little miniature doppelganger as like the version of herself that protects her from having to deal with her confusing coming of age sexuality. And I want to make it clear, it's easy to look at this and say, oh, well, she's a lesbian who's struggling with her queerness. I actually read her as a bisexual because there's also the scene where she looks at the man's torso on the phone and gives it a proper lick.
No bi erasure, that's good. So, hey, but do you find that, because obviously the biggest complaint with High Tension is that it's possibly homophobic. I mean, we haven't discussed it on our main feed yet, but that's definitely a complaint lodged against it. And with that reading of it, I don't really view this as that, especially when you bring in the religious aspect, because I mean, if you grow up religious and you are queer, there's like a self-hatred. I mean, I'm only speaking from my point of view, of course, because I grew up, as I've discussed before, Catholic. There's like a self-hatred there, or like a constant feeling that you're wrong. Mine never manifested in murderous ways, but I guess I kind of get it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something here that suggests that it's the fault of religion for causing her to feel like the feelings she's experiencing are unacceptable and therefore resulting in murderous impulses.
But are we led to believe that she killed the girls after the fight? Okay, after the crash. Sorry.
Well, it's a bit of a fight where she's like, pay attention to the fucking road. Stop looking at dicks on your phone. Kids, this is a PSA. Don't look at dicks while you're driving because you could get into a car accident.
To be fair, the girls were being real bitches to her. They were not nice to her. So, I mean, there's also an aspect of bullying there. So when coupled with those feelings of sexual awakening for a member of the same sex, I like it kind of goes hand in hand, I guess. Also, sexual attraction for your bullies, too. That's a whole other avenue.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I gravitated to in this is the dichotomy between the ages, right? Like, Juliette is clearly younger, and that's why she doesn't have the experience with these feelings, and that's where some of the problems are coming from. Mm-hmm. But it's also because these two girls are so hyper-sexualized in the front seat, right? Like, you know, they're literally pulling off their seatbelts so that they can take a better look at this man's torso. And I also love the decision to use an actual photo as opposed to an animated photo, because it's so visually striking. Not just because, I appreciate a good torso, but
of course. Also, though, like the girls, all three of them are very top heavy, I guess is the phrase I will use.
When have you ever been polite about boobs?
And so I mean that would make sense that the murderous side of herself has not sexually matured in the body. Like, she is like a child. She hasn't developed her breasts yet.
Yeah. I see Alter describes the animation style as a sexualized good girl of Betty Boop. And I was like, oh, yes, I see it now.
And this might be so reductive, but I was getting anime vibes from that, from the oversized breasts. But yes, the Betty Boop is probably a more apt comparison.
Yeah, because anime doesn't actually... the anime that I've seen doesn't do as much of that. That's actually more of a North American animation style, like particularly if you look at superhero drawings where it's like big ass titties all the time.
Ass, titties, ass and titties. Have you never heard that song?
I mean, it sounds familiar.
2 asses, 4 titties. 2 asses, 4 titties.
Okay, not where I thought you were going with that.
It's a song. No, yeah, but I think that does make sense. I now I kind of want to rewatch it, like knowing. I mean, I should have probably done a bit more analysis, or a bit more of research into it before jumping into this. But I thought it'd make for a better discussion in case any of our other listeners watched this and maybe walked out confused.
I mean, this isn't one that's going to hold you by the hand. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, are you, like, I'll admit the first time I watched this, I completely missed the Virgin Mary crying blood. Like, I saw it, but I didn't make a connection to it. I was like, oh, that's just some weird religious imagery in her, like, fever dream.
And I did catch it, but it's like, I think it's because immediately after, though, it's when all the gore happens. So it's like, it's there, but then I forgot about it, because I feel like so much happens right afterwards. And again, that's on me for not paying better attention to it.
I mean, there's something very visually pleasurable about this. Like, I like the color choices. The animation does feel smooth. And actually, I should cop to the fact you said anime, and I immediately was like, well, actually, no. But the way that even, like, the blood is shot, like, coming out of wounds, actually does lend itself to an anime vibe.
Yeah, well, there you go. So would you watch a feature-length version of this, be it animated or live action?
Definitely not live action, because I think the appeal of this to me is this animation style. I find it really, really compelling. I would 100% watch a longer version of this. I don't know if you could do a full length unless it was, we've talked a lot about, would you make this as a kind of May-esque movie where it's just about a confused girl and you get to see part of her growing up and what does she become? I don't think I'd want that for this, because part of the attraction is the weird hallucinatory vibe of it, and I don't know how that would work with an animated film for feature length, but I would have loved to see like a 30-minute version of this.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that as well. I think you can. I mean, while I agree that the animation is a major component of the film and that's part of its draw, I can see the story of like told in live action in longer form. I would definitely want it to be handled by a queer person, given that it is about kind of like that the rejection of one's own sexuality. So I think it would be easy to be mishandled outside of a queer person's hands.
That is very fair. I mean, and just honestly, let's get more queer directors and creatives working, right?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe one final thing to kind of close the conversation is thinking about the idea of doing this as a live action. In the other interview that I was referencing, the Q&A that Alter did with Laura D'Adazio, she actually talks about her horror character that she relates to on a spiritual level. This won't mean as much to you, but for folks who have seen Twin Peaks, she mentions Laura Palmer is her quote-unquote horror spirit animal. We don't use that term because that's appropriation for Indigenous people.
I will have you know that I have seen the first season and a half of Twin Peaks.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So
so I do know. Yeah.
So Laura Palmer is actually very apropos when you think of this little girl as having kind of a light side and a dark side, and how does she manage the complexities and the desires of each of those? Because really, Laura Palmer does have those different personalities, like the cute popular and the well-behaved, and the evil and tormented burning soul. That's what Laura mentions in this interview. And I think that's actually very apt. Like, you could see Twin Peaks almost being an adult or a more adult version of live action of this.
It is, but again, I haven't finished Twin Peaks, but Laura Palmer does not become a murderess, right?
She gets into some super bad shit where she becomes a sex worker and a drug addict and a thief, and I would say go and check out Fire Walk with Me, but that's really for the hardcore dedicated Twin Peaks people. It's not an easy watch.
I own the whole damn set, so maybe one day, but
it's really good.
Okay, well, listeners, let us know what you thought of Juliette. Did you enjoy it? Were you left a little confused like me, or did you kind of read into the more complex aspects of it? Let us know. And until next week, on that note, we can cross out Juliette.
Yes, and cross out microqueers.
Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network, home of creepy, disturbing, and terrifying creepypastas, SCP archives, weekly full cast storytelling, the Pora Queers, genre commentary from an LGBTQ perspective, and the Boo Crew, for horror-centric interviews. Listen free wherever you stream audio and at bloodydisgusting.com/podcasts.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.